Oh, and Andrew's here now. And Dave is
Okay.
here as well.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you all for coming. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll be conducting under the Zoom rules. So I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? All those in favor? All those in favor, Mary,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Christie,
Aye.
and Seth.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes of the previous meeting, July 18th, I've read them, actually, looks pretty good. Does anyone have any omissions, additions, questions?
I'm just going to abstain since I wasn't part of the commission.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion or a comment first, or?
Motion to approve the minutes is submitted.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Mary,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
and Steph,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, public comments for anything that's not on the agenda. Megan,
We have Hillary Rayport with her hand up.
okay, go ahead, Hillary.
Good evening, everyone. This is Hillary Hedges report, and I'm here to make a public comment about the decision the planning director made to stop supporting the HDC advisory boards. Director Vorse has accused the HDC of delegating their authority to the advisory boards, and there is no evidence provided of where they have delegated their authority. So if there is evidence, I would like to see it. The HDC does not have enough professional staff to keep up with their workload. The citizen-comprised advisory boards bring important professional expertise to the HDC. And as you know, the HDC is an independent commission that is empowered to operate itself. It has enabling legislation which allows it to set its own guidelines and its own rules. The HDC has been a revolving door of administrators. There have been 4 HDC administrators in 4 years. Now we're facing what is really a crisis around the advisory boards, which further hobbles the HDC to get through their workload. You might wonder why I'm bringing this up with you. You're concerned with planning and transportation. You might feel that you're not concerned with the administration of the HDC. Of course, Andrew Vorse is your employee, and you are stewards of Nantucket. And we're approaching the 10th year anniversary of the creation of PLUS. We have a planning director who, with this decision, is harming the HDC. And I believe this harms the island. If you do nothing, you're standing by, enabling the dismantling of our historic district. The protections the HDC provides are fundamental to the long-term health and the future of Nantucket, and without them, Nantucket would be spoiled. So I ask you, please don't shrug off your responsibility for managing the long-term health of our historic island. Ask Andrew Vorse to continue to support the HDC advisory boards, or rather to direct his staff to do so, and to expand support for the HDC overall. Your response, which I don't expect tonight, but I hope you will take it up with your staff, will inform whether or not the town of Nantucket can rely on PLUS to deliver the services you and it agreed to in 2012, when you agreed to a memorandum of agreement wherein support services and staff for town boards such as the HDC and other boards and other town departments are outsourced to the NP and EDC, which, as you know, is not part of the town. So thank you for considering these remarks. As you can see, I feel very strongly about it, and I think a lot of other people do too. I also am noting that I'm delivering this by webinar, and that the planning board and the NP and EDC are the only two bodies in the town that are continuing to meet by Zoom webinar without also having an in-person hybrid component. So I'm sorry that I can't be there in
Nick, I'm in a
person.
meeting. I have to call you back later.
But you know, I hope that that changes and that you'll start meeting in person, having a hybrid component along with the webinar. And thank you for considering my comments. I take it very, very seriously, and I take it as an attack on the HDC. Thank you.
Anybody else, Megan?
Georgia Raisman.
Okay, Georgia.
Thank you.
Try not
Matt.
to repeat, try not to say the same thing, so go ahead.
I was going to try not to say the same thing because Hillary is so exhaustive in her comments and so carefully thought out. I was simply going to say that it came as a great shock to us that these very useful advisory boards should be so summarily dismissed and done away with. It seems awfully high-handed. I also know that through our work at the historic district, at the Nantucket Historical Commission, that the HDC has a very difficult time as it is, and they've been meeting with us, and we find that that's very useful. And I just find it extraordinary that a group of volunteers all over the island, representing all segments of the island, should suddenly be disenfranchised, done away with, and summarily dismissed by an individual who himself does not particularly apparently care for what the HDC does, nor for the appearance of the island. So I really urge you to give this very careful thought. This seems to be another method by which the island's historic character is being denigrated. We won't go into all the other ways that we've seen that happening recently, but please let this not go unaddressed. You guys have a tremendous responsibility, and I hope you will take it as seriously as it is. Thank you, Nat, and thank you, the rest of this commission.
Megan, is there anyone else?
Yep, we have Ann Duez, Tristan Damon, Megan Perry, and then Ann O'Neill, and then Marcia Fader.
Go ahead.
I think my name was mentioned first, so I will step into the breach. It's Ann Duez. I just have a relatively simple question, I think, something I'm trying to understand along this subject matter, which is why are we trying to fix something that isn't broken? One can argue maybe a little bit of tinkering around the edges needs to be done with the advisory committees, but fundamentally, we do not have a problem. And so why are we trying to fix it? That's a kind of a basic rule in good governance. You don't fix something that's not broken. The idea that the HDC delegates is very strange to me. I've sat in on hundreds of hours of HDC meetings, and I've never once seen them delegate. So if there are specific examples of delegation that have caused problems that are verifiable, then I think we should those should come into the public sphere, and we can have a look at those and say, are they really something that is so problematic, these specific examples, that it requires throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Tristan Damon.
Go ahead.
Oh, hold on. I don't know where you went. Says that they need to upgrade their version of Zoom. So we'll go to Megan Perry.
Thank you. Hi, Nat. How are you?
Hello, Megan.
I'm not sure if this is the correct location to ask this question, but who asked town council to give an opinion on the advisory boards?
This isn't a public hearing, Megan. It's just for comment.
Okay, so that was just my public comment, I guess, or a question. I was just curious. So thank you. I guess I'll direct that question somewhere else.
Megan? Anyone else?
Ann O'Neill, followed by Marcia Fader.
Okay.
Hold on, I lost Ann. There she is.
Sorry about that. I was muted. I live on Main Street, and I want to support everything that is said up to this point. I'm new to this, but one of the impressions I have right now is that the members of this board seem to be frowning on all of us trying to speak and trying to make a comment. There's an enormous amount of eye rolling going by and people on their phones taking calls from other places as if this isn't a serious matter. So I'd like to first say I support wholeheartedly what Hillary and Anne and the third woman said. But in addition, I'd like to say it would be nice to feel respected in this process. And I guess I would begin by saying, you don't feel respected when something is disbanded without public comment. And I suppose since you don't want us to repeat ourselves, that's what I'll say. But I'd like to voice my support of the other two women who have spoken before me.
Ma'am, with all due respect, do you think something like this is as simple as you're making it sound? No, there's a lot of information about this that will be coming forth. And, you know, you read I'm sure you got all the email that Hillary sent to the whole island earlier today. You had the email from John Giorgio in there. Okay, this didn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, so, but there'll be more information coming forth. These committees aren't just disappearing like forever. That's not the case. There's going to be a process to get back to, you know, a path for these committees or this process to advisory.
So
who's next, Megan?
Nat,
Go
can I
ahead,
just make a
Nat.
quick comment?
Not a public. Go ahead, Christy.
Sorry, I just wanted to clear it up for the public because I think sometimes public comment can be a little bit confusing and feel like we're not engaged, but in the open meeting law, we can't really respond. Like we couldn't answer Megan's question. And so it's not that we're not engaged, it's that we're listening and that we can respond at a future agenda. Future meeting when it's an agenda item, but we can't engage in some of these comments. But that doesn't mean that we're not listening and that we're not taking these into consideration. We just, in open meeting law, can't respond to these specific questions and comments. So we are listening. Thank you.
And just, you know, what Christy said is, I'm trying to give you a little latitude because of what you said about us rolling our eyes and taking phone calls and things like that. So I thought I would respond a little bit to that. So thank you for your comments. Okay, we hear them. Megan, who else?
We have a handful of people with their hands up. Marcia Fader, followed by Sanford Kendall.
Hi, I know many of you. My name is Marcia Fader, and I just really wanted to speak in support of whatever resolution, whatever work that you can do to bring the boards back to being the active, efficient, incredibly useful counsel that they provided. I speak as an island architect. I speak as a member of one of the first sign advisory councils from the 1980s. So yes, I suppose I'm telling you that I'm a little bit older, but I've been on many of the advisories and I've been a member of the HDC. And so it's true that it's work that is very, very important to me on the island. And to my knowledge, in that work, we operated in an advisory capacity always. And and I don't really know. And maybe there are instances in the complexity of the situation where the HDC itself did not take the vote. But in my experience, the HDC took the recommendations, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they were completely ignored. But the HDC, in my experience, always took their vote, and they were the ones that were totally had the authority, the legal authority, and used that, and in advisory capacity. And so that's the only way that I'm responding, as to the little that I can see as to what the issues are. And that's all I can speak to. But I definitely would be here to support whatever work can be done to restore those advisory boards back into action. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Masha.
We have Sanford Kendall, followed by Jennifer Baldock, and then Matt Fee.
Yes, thank you. I was on the HDC a long time ago, but I'm shocked that a board that is so overworked is the HDC. I was on it in the 80s, and it was 20 to 30 hours a week, and I can't imagine how much time each of those commissioners puts in now. But I know that they valued the support of the independent neighborhood advisory boards. I am also shocked that once again it seems like the town is we've got neighborhood participation, citizen participation here. There are 20 of those hardworking people that have been doing this for quite a while that are now unemployed, shall we say. And I hope that when these boards hopefully are reconstituted, that we'll get those people back again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sandy.
Jennifer?
Hi, thank you. I'm Jennifer Baldock. I live on School Street in town, and I joined a little bit late. I will try not to repeat what I'm sure other people have said, but I will say that over the last year and a half, every one of my neighbors has done a major renovation, or not everyone, but most of them. And I have spent a lot of hours listening to HDC meetings and seeing how I'm echoing they're incredibly overworked. And I just want to speak specifically to the Architectural Review Committee, Advisory Committee, because that's the only one I really had experience with. But I think they played an extremely valuable role. And if it is possible, I would urge you to reinstate the committees immediately. And if you want to study them while they're still ongoing, do that. But I think that the HDC is so unbelievably overworked. And at times, I think things get by the HDC because it's now 9:15 at night, and they can't take it anymore. So those are my comments. And I agree with everyone before me.
Thank you, Jennifer.
We have Matt Fee, followed by Tristan Damon, and then Catherine Ward.
Hey, Nat, it's
Good,
me.
Matt.
Hey, no,
see.
I was surprised as well when this all happened. The select board wasn't consulted. I don't think the HDC and others were, to the best of my knowledge. I've asked, how this was done. I think the process for this was, sort of wasn't. So I'm asking. I want to make sure to see what the process was that got us here for this decision. I think the HDC, as everyone has mentioned, a lot of that is important to the economic vitality of the island. It's important to all of us. And my suggestion to the advisory boards is they should keep working and give their advice as citizens. They're advisory, and there's nothing that says they can't advise as citizens. I'm asking Libby and the select board to discuss reinstating these boards so that we can actually talk about how we got here and why this might be a good thing or not a good thing. I hope that I'm supported by my fellow select board members. That remains to be seen. And I'm a little concerned that there's been a change on the island from sort of what was accepted in, a community and cultural community. And here's how I'll describe it. I know I'm going to be like you, Nat. I'm going to tell a quick story. I had the bagel company and I opened it in the 80s, and I probably didn't even apply for a sign. I put Nantucket Bagel Company sign up, and it had a dark purple background and had the wrong font. And within an hour or two, an HDC member was in saying, "You've got the wrong sign." Well, I didn't hire a lawyer or argue that it was racist and it should have been something else. I just painted it dark blue and we put the right font. And 3 days later, we had a sign and it was done. And that was just kind of how things were done back then. And I think, you did the things that were in the common good for the community, because that's what we were all pointing toward. And I get worried that we're starting to, sort of veer from that. And so anyway, I hope that we can put these people back to work, or I hope they can stay working on their own and we can sort through this. Thank you.
Didn't have social media, Matt, when you opened up that bagel shop.
No, they still found me within 2 hours. They would have got me in about 3 minutes if we had social media. And then they
right. And that's exactly, just keep that in mind.
No, I agree.
Next, Megan. Thank you, Matt.
We have Trista.
Okay. Was he the one that had trouble, or is that somebody else?
So he's on here twice, and this one, it seems like there's less trouble, but it's still, oh, now he's connected.
Okay.
We can't hear you though.
All right, Megan, on to the next.
Oh, he's there. Well, I see him.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to mute the other devices that you have playing in your household. All right. In the meantime, we'll jump over to Catherine Ward.
Okay.
Good evening and thank you. And I just want to make a comment that, I've heard the various comments before, and I liked what Matt was saying about looking at what we've done and the process that was done. And I'm just wondering if, when we make these controversial type of decisions, just point blank, they're gone. If it wouldn't be a good idea to say, we're doing this because, and if we know the reason behind it, then there's going to be either more acceptance or an ability to be more specific with conversations. I think it would just help in future decisions. There have been a lot recently that having an explanation would have helped the community understand why things are being done, not just that they're done. So thank you for hearing.
Thank you, Kathy. Is Tristram back, Megan?
I had to mute him. Okay.
Megan?
Yeah, I need you to mute your other devices in the house.
All of them are off.
Is your phone on?
Yeah, it's on.
Are you watching the recording on YouTube? It's causing an echo.
Sounds like a horror movie.
There we go.
Are you here? All right, we're in.
Hello.
There we go.
Yes.
Megan. Tris, go ahead.
All right. My voice is crackling, so Beverly's gonna be my voice.
Yeah, we're Tuckernuckers. We're residents of Tuckernuck. My husband and I own the Georgie Coffin House on Tuckernuck. I'm president of the Landowners Association. And we feel that the HDC is paramount to the island of Tuckernuck because of so many reasons. Without the advisory committee, we'll suffer from lack of oversight, both architecturally, historically, as well as the legalities involved with so many issues. We've had, differences with the Singh 7-building complex in 2010, the Clark House in 2019, and the Rhinema House in 2020. And the HGC has been extremely helpful to us because of the difficulties in both proximity and access, not to mention the weather. The HGC can't visit, nor has the time to come over. So we make appropriate suggestions, which they can or cannot utilize as they see fit. We really ask, and I speak as well for Susie Robinson, who's on Tuckernuck today, please allow the advisory committee for Tuckernuck, as well as the others, but be left intact to aid the HGC in our efforts to retain the historical significance and future of Tuckernuck. Trist is also a member of the Tuckernuck Advisory Committee, along with John Finney, Michael Taylor, Susie Robinson. Anyway, thank you for listening and putting up with our Zoom difficulties.
Thank you very much. Okay, Megan. Is the list smaller now?
There is no one with their hand raised at the moment.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Hillary has her hand raised. I'm not sure if you're taking a second round.
I think enough has been said about this. Everybody knows what's going on with this, and as far as this isn't being disbanded, cut off from civilization. That's not what's happening. I'm sure there will be detailed information coming forward and a path forward for these advisory committees. So thank you very much. And we will move on.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on.
Yes, Andrew, go ahead.
Can I just say, at the next meeting, I'll certainly respond to these issues so the commission has a clear understanding of what happened.
And follow up with Libby and select board agendas coming forward before our next meeting, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next item is the election of officers, and we have a kind of a tradition that we appoint the chair of the planning board to pro tem chair the process. So I'd like to accept a motion to John Trudell to be chair for this process.
Second.
Who made the motion? Sorry.
Dave.
Okay, sorry. And Bert seconded.
Bert.
Okay, sorry, Bert. Thank you. All those in favor? Mary?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Barry?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
And Seth?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
You skipped me, Matt.
Oh, Bert, I'm sorry. I'm the people that I'm sorry. Oh my God, Bert, sorry about that.
Aye.
John?
Okay. Everyone, we've received a couple of letters of interest. One for Mary that was seeking the chairperson position, and also for Barry for the vice chair position. If there's anybody else that has an interest, I guess now would be a time to express their interest. Hearing none, is there a motion to nominate for a vote? I guess we'll take these, we can take these both together, being that there are only two applicants for that or interest in those. So I'd entertain a motion.
I'd have a question before that.
Sure, discussion. Go ahead, Bert.
Is Nat not running again?
Got to read your packet, Bert.
I
All right,
can't open
all
it.
right, you
I put
got
a-
an
I put a
electric car
message
now,
back
so
to
you're
Megan
gonna
the other day
pass.
that my package wouldn't open.
So just to clarify, Bert, there was a letter, an email sent from Nat to the board expressing his interest to not seek the chairpersonship. So no, he is not interested in continuing as the chair.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Comment?
John, if I could,
Sure, go ahead, Nat.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Mary Longacre as chair of the NPDC for the next year.
Any discussion, or is there, would there
I'll
be a
second
second?
that.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made by Nat, and I believe Christie second to nominate Mary Longacre as chair. We'll take a roll call. Nat,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Christie,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. That is unanimous. Well, welcome.
Congratulations, Mary.
Congratulations, Mary.
And thank you to
And-
Nat for his years of service. He's not going anywhere. He was just reelected to another 5-year term. So.
All right,
And,
now on to the
if
vice
I-
chair.
Like to nominate Barry.
I could,
Go,
Yeah.
sorry, before that, go ahead, Nat, I think you had a comment.
no, go ahead.
Okay,
I wanted to
Um,
thank Mary for that comment. Thank you.
sorry to rush. I don't want to miss any thank yous. Joe, I believe you were making
I want to recommend Barry for vice chair.
Second.
okay, motion's been made by Joe, seconded by Dave, to nominate Barry for vice chair. Roll call. Nat,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Christie,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Congratulations, Barry.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion before I hand this back to our new chair and vice chair? All right, thank you.
I just want to thank everyone again for my years as chair and the support I've had. A lot of people aren't here with us now as well, so it's been quite an honor, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to working with Mary. Mary is quite an individual. Gotten to know in the last year and a half a little more than I did before, and we are in good hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Mary, for stepping up into this position. And I believe procedural, I hand this over to Mary. Is that correct?
Please vote.
Okay, Mary, you are at the helm. Thank you.
All right, and thank you all for a smooth transition. Next item on the agenda is agency appointments. We have 6 committees where we need to appoint representatives, 1 each to the Contract Review Committee of Human Services, the Capital Program Committee, the Affordable Housing Trust, 3 to the Bylaw Committee, and 1 to the Rural Advisory Policy Committee, and 1 to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Do we have nominations starting for the Contract Review Committee of Human Services? Or perhaps I should say volunteers.
I see Bert's hand.
I've been on it for the last couple of years. If someone else would like to take it, fine. Otherwise, I'd do it again.
All right, we have Bert volunteering. If there are no other nominations, do you think that we can take this as a complete slate, or do you want to do individual votes for each position? Andrew, is there a protocol for that?
Yeah, I'd suggest individual.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have a motion to accept Bert as the Contract Review Committee of Human Services representative from NPNEDC?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott.
Second.
I got a second from Barry.
Thank you all. It has been my practice in other committees to conduct the roll call votes alphabetically by last name. Hopefully that will be acceptable here, but we can certainly choose another method if that is desirable. So Seth Engelborg?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
Bert Johnson?
Aye.
Nat Lowell?
Aye.
Barry Rector?
Aye.
Joe Topham?
Aye.
John Trudell?
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you, Bert. For Capital Program Committee, do we have nominations or volunteers?
Oh.
And
Yes.
our previous representative was?
Well,
You're the
Christie.
sitting person, aren't you, on this?
I was
Was it
the
Christie?
previous.
Christie. Okay, got it. Christie, yep.
I was the previous rep.
We never refilled it after
Oh, we didn't. Okay.
Christy left and Matt came in temporarily and the
Right.
position was just never reappointed.
That's why I couldn't remember it. Thank you. Christy, do you have an
Yeah.
interest in continuing?
I would prefer if another person could fill this seat at this time.
Do we have another volunteer? Andrew, if that seat is not filled tonight, I imagine we can come back at our next meeting and try again. Okay. All right, so we will pass on that one. The Affordable Housing Trust, do we have a volunteer or nomination? Dave?
I would happily stay on if at the pleasure of the rest of the board.
All right, do we have a motion to nominate Dave Iverson for the Affordable Housing Trust representative from NPNEDC?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
moved.
So moved.
Okay, I think that was Joe moving, and I'll take Nat for a second. A roll call vote. Seth Engelborg?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
Nat Lowell? Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Bert. Bert, my command of the alphabet must be slipping.
Aye.
Thank you, Bert. Barry Rector?
Aye.
Joe Topham?
Aye.
John Trudell?
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you, Dave. 3 names for the bylaw committee. I had indicated I would be willing to serve. This committee was previously Judith and Fritz and Nat. We're looking for 3 volunteers. Barry?
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer as well. I tried to get back on it. When I came back on the board, I was on it prior before my leaving. So I'd like to continue if possible, please.
Okay, do we have a 3rd volunteer?
Yeah.
Christy?
I'd like to stay if I could, but otherwise.
I'll let Nat.
Okay, thank you, Christy. So we have a slate of Nat and Barry and me for the bylaw committee. Do we have a motion to appoint those 3 people?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you, Bert.
Second.
And I'll take Christy as a second. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
Bert Johnson?
Aye.
Nat Lowell?
Aye.
Barry Rector?
Aye.
Joe Topham?
Aye.
John Trudell?
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. The Rural Advisory Policy Committee. I think Wendy was our current or most recent rep.
Yeah, she is.
Do we have any other volunteers, or do we want to nominate her to continue?
I'd make a nomination that we continue with Wendy. She seems to enjoy it.
Thank you, Barry.
I'll second
You know?
that.
You'll have to third, Bert.
Yeah.
I had a second from Joe. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg?
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
Bert Johnson?
Aye.
Nat Lowell?
Aye.
Barry Rector?
Aye.
Joe Topham?
Aye.
John Trudell?
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. And then the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, we need 1 representative on that committee. Do we
I'll
have
put my
one
name
here?
forward.
Joe, thank you. Anyone else? I'll take a motion to appoint Joe Topham as the NPNEDC representative to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, I saw Dave and then Bert, I think, seconded.
Barry, well,
Whoever.
Oh, okay.
Mary moved, I'll second, I think.
Okay, thank you. So roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector. Barry, did we lose you? All right, we'll have to pass on Barry. His connection might have gotten unstable. Barry, are you there? All right, we're not able to hear Barry at the Joe Topham,
He'll be back.
John Trudell,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. So thank you all. The next item on our agenda is the Monomoy area plan. And let me briefly provide a little context for that. Get this up here. That's not it. The enabling legislation under the section 7.03 on reports, the commission shall review and evaluate any report submitted to the commission which was not prepared by the planning office. In its review and evaluation, it may determine bias, completeness, relevance, and objectivity, etc. So that is the context in which I was viewing this report. I did provide some comments, and those comments were incorporated in an updated draft. We're starting with the original draft, which Megan sent out with the packet. And we can certainly address the comments I provided and the response as well. So Megan, do you want to put that up on the screen, or do we need to do that? Are there other members of the committee who had comments? I should say commission, pardon me.
And there's also a couple staff members. We have Holly as well as Lauren Sinatra here who may or may not have comments on the plan.
Thank you. Any comments from commission members? I am not seeing any hands. Any comments from staff? Holly, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I just wanted to thank not only Monomoy's area plan folks that's been creating this, but as well as the commission themselves, you all. Briefly, I thought that overall it's very nice. It's very, I think, eye-catching. I love the history in the beginning of the document. I would mention that the vision should include the built environment, not just the wildlife and wetlands aspect. Regarding the land use, I would recommend including priorities within the cultural resources section, not just the other section that's been touched on. Historic architectural history, heritage, it's more than what is actually shown with MACRIS, which is Massachusetts Historical Commission's database. As some of you may be aware, through an ongoing effort through this office, we are updating the cultural resource surveys through an MHC grant that we've received. We're working on second round. So that is to look at the entire island's architectural history, not just certain segments of the island. So it would be nice to notate that as a possible priority. And again, on the implementation strategies for the natural and cultural resources, it seemed to be mostly natural resource centric on understanding its location and its proximity to wildlife and wetlands. It would be nice to add that section in there. Overall, those are my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Andrew, you also have some comments?
I do. There's a few issues. I know that there was a discussion about zoning that is probably that we're going to have some specific comments on. The history of zoning actually in Monomoy is that it started out in a zone called residential, which was a 5,000 square foot zone, and that was changed at a later date to LUG 1. I think there should be some further discussion. I've talked to Holly about that, of the the original subdivision plans which were much denser in there, and basically with the adoption of the LUG 1 zoning, that's sort of what led to the current character that's been maintained, which is really, I think, a great story to tell about, how the zoning sort of worked here in, which didn't work as well in some of the other areas. I think there's some concern about too much discussion on properties that are outside of the district. This is something we talked about early on. I think the Cathcart Road property, which is outside of the boundary of the district, that discussion needs to be clarified of why that's in. The water company property, again, is outside of the district. There needs, I know that Lauren has some concerns about the language that was included there, so I think we're going to have to revisit that. That comes up in area plans that, border on other town facilities like airport and wastewater, the landfill in Nantucket, for example. So that I think we're going to have a further discussion on. On the housing, I think we've sort of addressed that. And I did want to just clarify that I absolutely said that housing, affordable housing in Monomoy and economic development were not a priority for that plan. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways of supporting housing. And one of the things I think I discussed specifically when I met with Francie and Dawn was support for the housing bank bill, which again, this is a neighborhood that would pay that particular fee if the legislation was passed, because as you know, that's been languishing at the state level. And again, it's an assessment on properties that sell for over 2 million. So as currently written. So I think we need to revisit that a little bit. But I will say that certainly the quality of the graphics and the overall layout are excellent. I think it's one of the nicest, most attractive area plans that we've received. So there's no question about that. There are, I think, a few issues that I noticed that may need a little bit more explanation as discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Other staff comments? Lauren?
Hi, Mary. Lauren Sinatra, Energy Coordinator. Thank you to the board. Hi, Francie. This was a beautiful report, read very well and simple. I did connect with the water company director, and we didn't have time to prepare formal comments, but we did have initial feedback, which I hope to share with the commission now, and I do hope to be brief. And this is regarding the Wires Valley Solar Project inclusion. The town and water company staff has consulted with the Monomoy Civic Association leadership on the proposed project scope and design starting in early 2021. A series of conversations and meetings were held and site tours were offered and conducted. From the input received from the Monomoy neighbors, the town and water company worked with the solar developer to conduct additional due diligence and accommodate several modifications to the proposed project. These included reducing the array size and footprint by 20%, increasing the visual buffer along Milestone Road from 50 to 85 feet by preserving and enhancing the natural vegetative screening, further mitigating visual impact concerns. We've increased the setback of the panels from Milestone Road bike path from 65 to 100 feet. We've completely removed the battery energy storage system. We've lab tested the solar panels to confirm the complete absence of PFAS, Gen X, and any other toxic materials that could potentially risk the water supply. We've also considered extending the lease term from 20 to 25 years to defer future development potential at the site. As a result of these changes and new economic benefits resulting from the recent Inflation Reduction Act, the project contracts are presently being renegotiated. However, the town and water company hope to resume public meetings and outreach activities this fall, and that would include direct re-engagement with the Monomoy Association. In regards to environmental mitigation at the site, there will be disturbance specifically by the removal of scrub oak, and that will result in the take of 6 state-listed moth species. This impact will be mitigated through a compliance fee to be paid by the solar developer, which will fund local habitat mitigation and enhancement activities. The payment was only assessed after exhausting all other available mitigation options with the town, state, and other on-island conservation organizations. Regarding open space land protection and covenant restrictions, it is the town's position that the Wyers Valley property is not subject to Article 97 water protection restrictions, as it was acquired for water supply purposes and continues to be used for water supply purposes. As you can see from the signage on page 45, the property is dedicated to the water company's Wyers Valley pumping station for public water supply with no trespassing by the public. As the property is dedicated for water supply operations, solar energy is a permitted use. However, the project must still meet Mass DEP's stringent solar siting guidelines and permitting approval. On page 49, the plan suggests that other municipal sites were not assessed for solar viability and that the landfills, soon to be capped and closed cells, were not studied as a potential site. This is simply not true, and staff requests additional time to properly address this inaccuracy and the related implementation strategy on page 77, which states review alternative options and impose development covenants to control and limit future development at Wyers Valley. Lastly, I appreciate and admire the inclusion of electricity and net zero goals. However, I do ask for some additional time to review the plan specifics and to suggest recommendations and updates. For example, Nantucket's demand for electricity hit a new record high of 55 megawatts on Monday, August 10th at 4 p.m., which is 8% higher than the previous peak hit last summer, which was 51 megawatts. Both figures would literally be off the charts as depicted on page 54. At the same time, National Grid confirmed last week that Nantucket has just 3.7 megawatts of interconnected solar electricity. For every kilowatt hour of solar energy that is generated on Nantucket, it is distributed locally. It does not get wasted or leave the island. And the more solar energy that is installed on island, the greater the island's resilience to electricity rate instability and local power outages. So I look forward to future discussions working with Monomoy and the planning department on this further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lauren. Another opportunity for commission members to provide comment. Seth, you just jumped to my top left corner. I didn't know if that was because you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Ms. Sinatra. Just a few points on the proposed solar energy project. Obviously, the best place that you can put solar energy is on already disturbed sites, and the requirement to cut native vegetation here will obviously have impacts. But if you consider the characteristics of the site being mentioned, it is already a somewhat disturbed site that's close to public use. What Lauren's talking about with the payment is not really the best way to do mitigation. The best way to do mitigation is on-site. And then second best way to do it is off-site with a local partner. The payments just go to a fund that promotes endangered species restoration anywhere in the state. However, I'm going to give kind of maybe a unorthodox or somewhat unpopular opinion. There are plenty of places in the state that need a lot more help in terms of environmental conservation than Nantucket does in some cases. So although we're maybe not directing impact locally or regionally, and it's our role as the NPEDC to direct the impact regionally, you're still a benefit for the state with those economic payments. I would urge the town and the energy office and the water company, however, to consider how they could do a little bit better in on-site mitigation, whether that's thinking about native species for their buffer or trying to do some on-site mitigation, but that seems like a discussion for somewhere else.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're the topic is the Monomoy area plan. We're straying a bit far from that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Barry?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would strongly agree with Andrew on a lot of the points that he brought up. I had sent him in the interim my list of concerns. There were about 18 bullet points that were sitting there. I do need a little bit more time to refine what those points are, but this is also going to go into a public comment phase as well too, which I find invaluable. And once I begin to see what the comments are, that may help flesh out a little bit more detail. But suffice to say, a lot of things that Andrew had brought up, a few of the things that Lauren had brought up as well too, I share similar concerns with that. And I feel as though that there are some things that will need to be addressed in the final version of the plan that's going to be out there, the area plan for Monomoy, to be able to make a little bit, better sense of what was going on. I mean, I like the plan. I thought they did a stellar job in terms of its composition, its layout. They brought in an additional element, I thought was absolutely great. And I have to give them major kudos for that. But like with any plan, there's always a bit of refinement that needs to take place as well too. So I'm hoping over the course of the next month, once we do receive public comment, to be able to give you a little bit more updated detail on some things. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. So my view is that, first of all, this plan is ultimately a document issued by the town of Nantucket, developed in collaboration with the residents of the area. And my comments that I submitted were first about housing, to make sure that the issue of affordable housing was addressed because it is such an urgent issue island-wide. And second, about items that might be out of scope, such as solid waste disposal and the solar project at Wires Valley. I felt I didn't want to give the impression that that the people who offered their opinions should not offer them, but I questioned whether this was the right vehicle for those opinions to be delivered, and wanted to emphasize that the content of the plan is an official town document. And so even with something like a net zero aspiration, which I was thrilled to see and quite surprised and applaud the residents for taking that initiative, I'm not sure that that's a town policy. And so in a town policy document, perhaps that's not the right place for that. I think further discussion, input from the public, input from other departments in the town that are affected by this is absolutely necessary. And I look forward to that. Andrew, do we have this scheduled for a public hearing at our September meeting or at a different time?
The exercise today was to review the draft to see if it needed further revisions before we set that date. So from the comments that we've received, I'm of the opinion that we probably need to do a revised draft and then set the public hearing for October. I think that we should meet. I think before we put out a document, I mean, with some incorrect items that need revision, I think that we should spend the time circulating it to the department heads, as you've suggested, Mary, and set the deadline for our next meeting in September to work on a revision between now and then issue a revised draft, which could be viewed by the public during the entire month of or after our September meeting between September and October. Our meeting in October is scheduled now for October 24th, if we can work on that date. So that would be my recommendation, is that we work with our Monomoy residents to work on a revised draft between now and then. We'll be back to you in September with a revised draft that addresses people's comments. And then we would put it out for a 30-day review and be ready, hopefully, to vote at the October meeting.
Thank you. We have a hand up from Nat, and then we'll go to Francie.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Andrew, I just want to bring up a couple things through you. Just not sure exactly where this goes, but to just add to the things that have been said. First of all, the Dinsmore cottages, Andrew, wasn't I think the history of how that was done, sort of similar to some other little pods of houses in Nantucket that were done, what was that, in the early 60s, 50s? Similar to, just curious when that was, sort of similar to what's down at in those places down off of North Beach on the right. Some sort of reflection on the historical character and how those were done. And the Comcast building, how we, and I think the members, the new property owners, I don't know if they all know what we recently did to get that parking in the street, sort of the willy-nilliness of that place, sort of kind of cleaned up with that, utilizing the milestone layout so they can pull to the right around the building, all the staff people, all the workers and employee vehicles that were previously sort of left in the front so the public had no place to park. I think that's important. During our hearings, when we did ask, or actually I did, and kind of stepped in it a little bit, not realizing how important that building is and it can't be moved. So that I think that they need to understand that, and we've done a pretty good job fixing the problem of that sort of loose parking there that used to exist. I think we should be discussing, I'm not sure exactly how to, the way when you come into Monomoy, the first, before you get to the turn, that's a wide, safe area with large front, you know, the houses were set way back. And, you know, it's easy and safe walking, biking. And I know that they don't want a bike path, and I'm not saying we should have one. I'm just saying that there needs to be sort of a language reflecting today versus tomorrow. I mean, we're going to be talking about the cliff, a sort of a weird spot on the cliff that's similar to here, except that it's worse there. But I can see the future where they might want some sort of, you know, shoulder for safe walking, baby carriages and so forth. But as of right now, I don't see a need for it myself, but I think that that needs to be explained, you know, a little bit better. I want to thank Holly and Lauren for their input. And that Monomoy Heights, Andrew, looks like the Co-2 subdivision of the early 1900s, doesn't it? With all those lots. That's fascinating. And the original zoning, you already brought that up. That's important. And the commercial stuff that's sort of outside the scope, I think that that needs to be, you know, made clear that, you know, the how Don Allen was there, the island tours building and island lumber as well, and what we've done to mitigate that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nat. Francie Neely, representing the Monomoy Civic Association, I believe.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Longacre, and congratulations on your election. And by the way, you are one heck of a editor. Thank you very much for your keen eye. And I'm going to say a few brief things, and then if I may, ask Matthew Westfall, also Monomoy Civic Association, who is one of the principal drafters of this document, which we are very proud of and which we worked very hard on. And if I could say, I appreciate all the nice comments about how it looks and it's being eye-catching, but to us, the most important thing is its content. And we think we tried very hard to make it substantive and accurate. And by all means, if we inadvertently made some mistakes, as you pointed out, Chair Longacre, we correct them and we will correct them. That's for doggone sure, as sometimes we say in Houston, Texas. So we will do that and be happy to do it. I hope that you will not in any way, as we talk this next month about what changes, that any way try to silence the voice and opinion of Monomoy. But, you know, the people should be able to speak as to what they think. I mean, it's not law. It is the view of an area. And I would also say, as one considers what should and should not be in the document, that we do not treat areas of this island as silos. We are interconnected. We are all interconnected. And I think the town should welcome that the neighborhood doesn't just care about its boundaries, but rather things that abut it and that affect the entire island. And I would just say that, but for our having included a section about our community's views about solar installation at Wyers Park, at Wyers Valley, this issue would not have even been discussed or thought about as much as you have already done. And that is in and of itself very, very valuable. That is a huge project with very, very serious implications. And Seth, if I may say so, I think I do agree with some of your concerns about this. What is about to happen, if allowed, would be unprecedented. And it would have serious negative environmental consequences. And finally on that, I won't belabor the legality because that's not our purview today. But we very much believe Article 97 does apply to the Wyers Valley property, and we prepare to challenge that legally. We're not going to be the ones today to decide that. Someone much smarter than I will decide that. But that is cherished. That property was to be kept, and I quote, in its natural state. And then before I pass it on, if I may, to Matthew Westfall, may I also ask what the process will be in the next month for getting revisions and are having dialogue with Andrew and Andrew's staff, because that's very important to us too. Where, you know, people start going hither and yon in later months, and we have worked so hard on this. We really want to do our best to get to hopefully reach agreement on every point and get it ready for public hearing so that you all can vote on it at your October meeting. So may I, it's up to you, of course, Chair Longenecker, but I'd love Matthew to get to say a few things.
Thank you, Francie. Andrew, do you want to respond to Francie's question about the process before we go to Matthew?
Sure. I think, you know, we have different staff that probably will create, you know, comments that will be sent off. And I guess, will the point person be you, Francie, or will it be Matthew, or who should we?
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
So anyway, you know, I've spoken to Holly, for example, about providing some information about the history that could be, you know, folded into the report. And I think, you know, we'll work to finalize people's comments and have them sent in. And, you know, I think to the comment of, you know, we're not necessarily silencing voices, but I think we need to be clear about, you know, if there are things that the Planning Commission, you know, doesn't want to be part of this, that needs to just be clearly identified, you know, that there was a discussion about it. As long as we're treating it, I think, openly and honestly, I don't think there's an issue with that. And I think that can be handled like it's handled in some of the other area plans. You know, and we can have conversations about that. And certainly through the, you know, the public hearing process can take more information in. So I see it as we would be funneling our comments to you at the working group and give you an opportunity to respond back. And then hopefully we'll have as much of this tightened up by our September meeting. And then if there's any disagreement, we would certainly flag that and, you know, for further discussion among you at the commission. So.
That'd be, I'm sorry, Andrew, I didn't mean to talk over you. That would be great. So September 19th, we hope to have, you know, this worked out between and among us. And so obviously, so that we can have responses to your further comments or more specific comments, if you could get us those, from your perspective, what you'd like to see us do as soon as possible, we'd sure appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you both for addressing the process. I'll just note the meeting date is the 19th. It would be great to have a revised draft a week ahead so that it can be circulated to the commission members as part of their packet, and they have time to review it and digest it.
That's more than fair, Chair Longenecker, but in that case, is there could we ask that Andrew and his staff provide us, when would they be providing us the specific comments so that we can respond to it? If we need to have a revised draft, by the 12th, we need to have comments, so, well ahead of that.
Can we target August 31st, Andrew? Just as a suggestion?
I think so. We certainly can do our best for that.
Just keeping in mind that we have a holiday weekend sitting in the middle of the first week.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we've already, I believe, Holly and Lauren have already started their process. So we will work diligently to get as much information as we can out as soon as possible. So I don't want to lock down in specific dates and deadlines right now. But by that, we will certainly shoot for that as our goal.
May I make a quick suggestion on process? Even if you don't get them all to us by August 31, Andrew, can you get as many as possible to us?
Yes.
That would be so helpful.
As soon as they're done, we will get them out. Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
And it is a process that is a lot of back and forth. So we move on. Mr. Westphal, thank you for waiting.
Hi, thank you. Great. Can everyone hear me? Good. Good morning from Manila. The sun is coming up. It's 6:10 in the morning here. Appreciate the opportunity to join this call. I just wanted to, well, first, thank you for all the comments. I think those are all extremely helpful. A little bit about where we're coming from. And I'm co-chair of this Monomoy Area Plan Working Group. I was roped in as an urban and regional planner with 39 years of experience working overseas in hundreds of communities in 26 countries. I work on community planning, participatory planning, inclusive development, working on water supplies, sanitation, solid waste. It's basically been my career. So when I was asked to join this, I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to deal with a community where I'm a resident and a voter and where I've been for the last 10 years. And the idea here was really to take the best practices that I know and share these with the Monomoy community in terms of participatory planning, working on a survey, reaching out to all stakeholders, getting all voices included, depending on how opposing there were. There were a lot of arguments and debate within those different subcommittees there and work groups. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of research. There were meetings with town officials, and there was a review of best practices. And this goes back to going to, for instance, the American Planning Association and looking at some of the award-winning plans that were done for Warren, Michigan, or Hilton Head, or Sanibel Island, and really trying to figure out how best can we articulate a vision for Monomoy over a 20-year plan? And what does the community really feel about some of these issues? And so everything we did was data-driven, and it was anchored on this survey. And the idea was, for the first time ever, which is really sort of incredible when you think about it, you're getting the voices of the Monomoy community, which, by the way, are probably far more diverse than you imagine. We have 13% of the community are year-rounders. We have school teachers. We have tradespeople. We have a lot of folks there. And in terms of workforce housing, I think we did a quick round robin just this last week based on Mary's comments. And I think there's around 10 or 12 sort of garage apartments that are serving for families who can't afford to live elsewhere and can have been able to find homes in the Monomoy community. And we're very proud of that. So that's sort of the big process. I just wanted to step back on what we were trying to achieve. And then I want to go back and I just want to talk a little bit, if I could. So those are the basic precepts of basic planning. That's just good planning, listening to the voices, taking opposing views, making space for those so you can compromise and figure out a way forward. And this isn't, this is really a series of recommendations that are put forward to NPEDC and the town to, frankly, take it or leave it. I mean, this is the view of the community. I mean, here's what we have to say. The second point I wanted to get into was sort of outside of the scope, which I find sort of a little quizzical, to be honest with you, based on my planning experience and my experience over the last 40 years. All community planning, no one lives in a silo, no man is an island, everything has issues everywhere, right? So if we're not dealing with Shimo, for instance, or we're not dealing with across Milestone Road with Wires Valley, or the NRTA and the routes and the bike paths, all of that is interconnected. And there are transboundary issues as well that one would talk about. Water quality in the harbor, water quality in the creeks, dealing with fertilizer runoff. If Monomoy comes up with a policy prescription that literally limits itself to just dealing with Monomoy, you don't solve those problems. And that includes solid waste, that includes protecting rare species habitats, which are all connected. There's a lot of that comes together. And so that's the bigger picture. But then I also wanted to just touch on specificity here, because part of our process as well was going through every NPEDC approved local area plan and understanding really what had come out of those exercises, what worked and what did not work, and how we wanted to position ourselves vis-a-vis all of that, so we could actually present and articulate this vision to the town and to the commission as an input to help the planning process. And what's interesting is if you go to, for instance, the Nantucket area plan, which was, I believe, approved in 2006, they go on at length about the ongoing groundwater and air quality testing related to the landfill, take immediate measures to mitigate negative impacts, and recommend that town explore innovative technologies for processing and handling waste, and undertaking an aggressive recycling program island-wide. And that was adopted. That has nothing to do specifically with Nantucket, but it's absolutely nearby, and it has huge impacts on their community going forward into the future. Similarly, if you look at the Mid-Island area plan, they then discussed many issues, moving the fire station out, moving a post office in, moving marine home out of the community. And where are you going to put those? Obviously, it impacts the rest of the island, right? So those issues were also outside of the narrow sort of geographic boundaries of the Mid-Island plan. And lastly, the Surfside area plan, which I believe Nat sat on as one of the members. Very well written, a lot of interesting insights, but again, they really get into issues outside of their boundaries, which include the general aviation of Nantucket Airport, the jet ramps, the lighting, and they actually went out forward, and I don't know if this was a town view, but they opposed the proposed bulk fuel offloading facility that was supposed to occur off island, specifically because they were worried about a disastrous spill that would destroy the South Shore's beaches and impact the wildlife and habitat. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is there's a long history of looking out to your neighbors in your community because we're on this island. And as Francie rightly pointed out, everything's connected. And what we're trying to do as a means to help the commission and the town with its master planning process is put forward the views of Monomoy that you can incorporate, you can take. It's essentially an a la carte menu of what we feel is important to us and how that is handled within the town. Now, what I would say is, I just hope that we don't excise out those opposing views and we don't sort of package it so it's vanilla ice cream and everyone likes it. Because if we do that, we fail as planners. The whole point about planning and participatory planning and inclusive planning and listening to those voices is to get those opposing views and understand those. So when we do come up with policy prescriptions and we do come up with a way forward, we're problem solving in a way that will be accepted by the community overall, generally, and will be more sustainable going into the future. So I'll leave it at that. And I welcome the comments that would come in, and we're very excited to work with the commission and get all comments on board. We're extremely flexible. We're not entrenched in any sort of hard view, but we do want to make sure that the voice of Monomoy is heard and articulated and incorporated into the vision of the town's vision going forward over the next 20 years in its own master plan. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew Westfall. Francie, are there any other members of your group here that wanted to speak? You're on mute, Francie.
Chair Longacre, I don't think so. I know that John Kitchener from Monomoy Civic Association is present, but I don't see that his hand is up.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. No, thank you very much for asking. I really appreciate, again, the time. And as you can see, Matthew S. Westfall is someone who, by his experience, is very knowledgeable in this area. He's a really wonderful guide to food, as you can probably tell. And I totally agree with him. We look forward to working with you, but we cannot change what the Monomoy people have told us they believe. We cannot change that because that would distort the feedback that we got through a very meaningful survey. And I totally applaud what Matthew said as well about the importance of giving a forum to all views, even if they're not necessarily ones with which individuals here or in the public might agree. It's important to have documents out there where people can say, oh, well, that's an interesting viewpoint. I've never thought of that. I may not totally agree with it, but I understand where they're coming from. So that is something that I very much hope does not happen as part. I don't think it will. You're all well-intentioned people, but that is very, very important to us. And again, thank you so much for your time and your careful reading. And we look forward promptly to starting again this conversation.
Thank you, Francie. And thanks again to all of the members of your committee and the participants in the survey and in the process of creating the plan. It's a tremendous amount of work, and I know I certainly appreciate the value of the opinions and of all the effort that has been put in.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, further comments from commission members? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've heard all the comments about outside the scope, and I think some things like the Wires Valley or the Cathcart, I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that. But then I hear these other comments about net zero policy or sustainable energy or a dark skies initiative. And it seems to me like those things don't affect Monomoy only, they affect the whole island. So maybe those are better suited for the town's master plan anyways. And maybe when these civic associations or these neighborhoods raise them as priorities, the town should look at them and reconsider them as part of the master plan rather than just in the area plans themselves.
Thank you, Seth. Anything further on this topic before we move ahead? Andrew, do we need a motion to simply continue reviewing, or is that taken for granted?
I think it's taken for granted unless anyone has another alternative motion.
All right, if there are no further comments on this issue, the next item on the agenda are the updates from the transportation manager. Patrick Reed is here. Patrick, I guess you're starting with the NRTA tip amendment.
Thank you, Chair Longacre. Actually, our NRTA director, Paula, is not able to attend tonight. In further coordination with FTA, they decided that it would be best to continue this item to a different time, most likely October. But a little bit of background, the intent here is to look at a low-no grant and to support basically NRTA capital needs. So you can anticipate that in the future on the future agenda, but tonight it would be best to continue that item.
And Patrick, can you help me out? A no-low grant is what in English?
Thank you. Yes, no or low emission vehicle grant.
Thank you. Because it sounded negative, but that's actually positive.
Yes, no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, and I look forward to hearing about it in a future meeting. The next item is a Lover's Lane update. The commission asked that we give a bit of an update on the Lover's Lane project. So staff, including the DPW, strategic project staff, and myself are working with consultant GPI on the design for Lover's Lane. Current designs are at 50%, and the town recently provided coordinated comments to the consultant. And generally, the transportation comments are minor and technical in nature, just small cleanups, questions about things like intersections, etc. A couple items on this one, if you haven't followed the project closely, the paved portion of the roadway, including the side path, falls within the roadway layout, except where the side path on Lover's Lane is located already within the Department of Conservation and Recreation's forested lands. That's that existing sort of path today that's a trail that would go ahead and be paved with this project. The town continues to work to secure easements to support drainage for the roadway, which would be paved eventually. And future updates may look at traffic and speed calming. So in future plan submissions from the consultant, we'll look at ways to kind of address any concerns that there might be about speeding on the roadway. The project costs have increased from the original estimate due to the scale of the drainage improvements. The intent is to future-proof this facility. And so you may have heard in a recent select board update, the project is now estimated just over 8 million. In order to spread these costs out, the town is looking at different options, including the construction of drainage improvements to meet the needs of future phases first, and then constructing the portion of the cycle path in the DCR, or the Department of Conservation and Recreation land, and then constructing the full roadway. Now, these phases could be combined ultimately, if funding allows. And there is a desire to sort of look at a more comprehensive approach, because I believe there is on the table some water extensions as well. So coordinating improvements makes sense from a mobilization perspective, getting your contractors out there, getting your paving out there and only doing it once. That's something that the town is starting to think about. Any questions on Lover's Lane?
Any comments from commission members?
Madam Chair, I do.
Yes, Joe?
Through you. Patrick, so just a couple quick questions. The trail that's going to be paved, I mean, it's one of my favorites, but the one thing I was wondering, now that that will be paved and we're hoping that more people will be accessing that, is there any thought of clearing out some of the lower brush in between Lover's Lane and that path? Just, I know we had some issues along Surfside Road and that bike path, even though it was a small section. I didn't know if little view lines were going to be opened up or anything like that. And then the other comments I had was Tacoma Way and Rugged Road, if they were ever to be paved, would that widening of those connectors, should that be done now? And I think most importantly at Tacoma Way with that parking area, does that make sense to anticipate that that road, I think, would be probably coming first before Rugged Road to be paved, if that was adjusted? So when Rugged Road, Tacoma was paved, it just linked right in, no changes to that parking area. That was the only little questions I had or comments, but otherwise I thought the plans were well documented and detailed. So just something to take under advisement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Patrick, any response?
Sure. Some grubbing and clearing is anticipated for the path within the DCR, just to, facilitate the paving. Right now, we aren't showing anything on the plans like a cut in from the roadway. The intent is to maintain whatever greenery we can that is still, supports the mobility of individuals there, so that the path is free and clear, but it's still a desirable path with a nice sort of green wall against it. I know the DPW and strategic projects team have been working closely with DCR to find something that will be amenable to them, and retaining forested land to the extent possible is obviously a priority for the DCR. In regards to the paving of Tacoma and Rugged, and thinking about sort of how we would facilitate this project to support future paving and road improvements, that's a great question. It is something that we can certainly talk about as the plans advance. One of the things that I think that the whole team has tried to be a bit conscious of is scope creep, and trying to think about this project in isolation, which has already increased in scale cost significantly, to the extent, we were really originally looking at something, I believe, just, over 2 million, and now we're talking about an $8 million project. But that being said, there's also this parallel desire to have a comprehensive view of the area. And if we are going to have that comprehensive view of the area and how our improvements are going to sync up with things like water extensions, I think you bring up a really good point, and thinking about, well, what improvements might be down the line in the future and how can we address those? So we can certainly take a look as future submissions come in on the plan and see what we can do, and see sort of the level of effort that would be involved, and impacts that would be involved with, kind of future proofing any future betterments.
Thank you, Patrick. Andrew, did you have something you wanted to add? Andrew, you have your hand up. I'm not sure if Andrew has us on mute.
He's,
Or perhaps
he's
just-
not on mute.
No, mute.
No, but he might have muted us.
All hear me?
There you are. Yes, we can hear you now, Andrew.
Okay, I just, I wanted to point out one thing about, I don't see Tacoma Way as extending anytime soon on that, Joe. There's been some concern about that extending through the state forest, and, you know, that's currently conservation land. I think actually Rugged would be the road that probably would experience improvements before that. I know that part of our discussion with the Camp Richards group was some improvement from Lover's Lane to their gate entrance. That is still a private road. I'm not sure if the right-of-way committee or anything has actually recommended whether that should become a public road. But I think in terms of a future connector, that's the more likely candidate. Just, I wanted to get that out there because I know there was a group very, very, very concerned about Tacoma being extended, and that's really not on our radar at all right now. So.
Yeah, just Madam Chair, follow.
Nat, you also had a comment?
No, just let Joe finish and then I'll pick that up.
Yeah, no, I mean, Patrick and I, watching the select board meetings, hearing of the creep of cost. I mean, creep is kind of a weak word. But yeah, just where the project has gotten, extremely expensive, is there a way to just kind of connect it? And I'm kind of surprised that I got it backwards, but it's good to know that Rugged Road would be probably going first, but still just the thought, if it ever was widened or even if it was gravelled or whatever, just if there's some planning. I just saw 6 or 8 parking spaces to, I believe, what would be the north of the east of the plan, and that parking lot being altered or adjusted. And I just was thinking, why not do it once correctly? I don't think it would be really any more expense other than a redesign, but that's why I was just trying to spend a little time to, trying to get ahead of it and not have at a later date, say it's 10 or 15 years down the road, that we're ripping apart that parking lot because it wasn't properly thought about the connections. So that was just my points. But thank you, Andrew and Patrick.
Thank you, Joe. Nat, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, through you to Patrick and Andrew, that were on these meetings. So I'm looking at the plan, Patrick, I'm talking strictly about Lover's Lane at the moment. And I see they've got it 22 feet inside the berms, correct? It says 11 feet.
Yeah, I believe
each
there's
side.
2 11-foot lanes and 22 curb to curb.
Yeah. So, you being new here, how people think here and how to mitigate the, perception of width and all that. So Boulevard is 22, Tacoma's just under 20 inside the berms. I measured it recently just to make sure I was right. And to give you an indication of, width in certain places when people bring these things up at meetings. Personally, I definitely think we're going to need to have speed humps. Some, I don't know where they should go, but there definitely needs to have some sort of mitigation for speed. This has been a long road. If this got brought up 10 years ago, there wouldn't even be a discussion. This would be like paving Millbrook. That's never going to happen. But this is different. This is a different area that definitely needs to be done, but needs to be thoughtfully done. What Joe's talking about Rugged Road is a 66-foot layout as well. It's a private road though. And we've discussed it right away a couple times in the past, not recently, but during the time when Andrew just brought up Tacoma, that's just, Rugged is the one that needs to be looked at. However, there's gonna be, it's a direct line to school, to the Mid-Island, to the other infrastructure with bike paths on fairgrounds and getting to Surfside Road to the schools. I kind of envision some sort of draft sketch of a bike path somehow on Rugged Road to connect to the existing, the one that comes down to, Saginaw, okay? That's kind of getting cleaned up a little bit now with that development. In a future, Rugged Road wasn't paved at all up until, the last 15, 20 years when they did that subdivision down there. So it's crept down a little bit. So I would be careful about how we proceed there. But at the same time, I would consider, I'm not going to sit here and say Lover's Lane should be 20 feet inside the berms, but you might want to think about it, because that's not going to be a truck route. There's not going to be semis driving down Lover's Lane. Where are they going to go? They have no reason to drive down there. There's going to be a lot of vehicles cutting through and dispersing and spreading out. But there's a lot of, Sconset Road's not even 22 feet, unfortunately, in some spots. So I would consider making it slightly narrower, just to appease that thinking process a little bit. That's just my thought as far as been through this for a long time and how things are. And I just think that might be the right thing. We're getting a lot here. We're getting a lot of improvements that have been needed for years. The boulevard roads have been on every selectman that's run in the last 25 years. And finally, there's some things being done. So that would be my input as far as that goes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nat. Other comments from commissioners?
I have one, Mary.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also on the board at the Camp Richards Campers Association. And our concern is we're happy to have the bike path come down on our land, and we've been cooperating for the easement, but we want to make sure that we get screening so that we don't have intrusion into the camp. We get tons of it now in the summer. The kids look for some place to party. There was on all the conservation lands, and now they're coming into the Boy Scout camp. So we do want screening along that side of the bike path just to help protect the camp.
Thank you, Bert. Patrick, if there are no other comments on Lover's Lane, please continue.
Thank you. I'll make sure I've taken note of your comments, and I'll make sure they're passed along to the project coordination team. Oh, sorry, Mr. Trudeau.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who to address this to. There's 143 pages. This is a very detailed plan. I appreciate everything that's gone into this. And there are some notes from different groups. And, if you look at page 13, number 5, alterations and adjustments of the gas, electrical, telephone, and other private utilities by utility companies, they'll be addressed. There's gate boxes and drainage and things like that are addressed. And I was just wondering, in all of this, has there been allowances? I know it's already increasing in costs. Have there been any allowances for future, maybe chases or PVC lines for future utilities? If we're going to disturb roads, and while they're dirt roads, and rip up everything and put pavement, in the building industry, they put separate chases going to a second floor for future use. I know that we've had updates in cable and certain types of lines and things, and it would be a lot easier, instead of tearing up pavement when it's already done, to put an inexpensive couple of chases with PVC or some other underground electrical things that are just empty chases and just make it easier for future expansion. I don't know if that has been explored, talked about, or accounted for in when this gets started.
So the consultant is under contract to also look at designs for, and apologies, I'm going to butcher the name, Orkawa and Monomoy roadways. So assumingly that, and this kind of gets back to that idea, the town is looking at how to coordinate all the improvements in this area. I'm sure when we start to kind of take a bigger view, that concept of how we can best hook up utilities will bring forward. But I think it's a great point. I mean, obviously you want to reduce the number of times you have to start to rip things up. And so I think kind of having this coordinated look at the area is important. That being said, my best sense is that we will have to phase these projects. And so you will probably have some situations where you're putting in bits and pieces of infrastructure to chase, as you mentioned, before they're actually ready to kind of move forward with anything. And that's just speculation on my part.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I think now you can move on.
Sure. Last two items here. I wanted to thank the NP and EDC for their support for the grant applications. Kind of updates on these. For the first one, the Wawinett side path. We ended up going to the Federal Highway, Federal Lands Access Program and asking for $823,000. This is just in coordination with them. The state was apportioned 2.2 million. So what I did was try to get a better sense of, what was an appropriate ask, if we could be given partial awards, if we could not be given partial awards. It's sort of an all or nothing opportunity. In this particular case, they were not amenable to the idea of partial awards. So trying to get a good sense about what we could ask for to support that path project was something that I had been working on. We went ahead and submitted our application. I'm fairly confident that it'll get some strong consideration. If awarded, the amount that will be provided will support construction between Pulpus and Pocomo. Would be taking a phased approach here too, just based on the sort of magnitude of expected costs. At this time, there's no actual engineering estimate because no design work has been done. So it's sort of a back of the envelope assessment on my part. Other good news related to this project, as you're probably aware, the town had 2 previous grant awards to support this path. Back in 2016, the town was awarded $283 roughly thousand with a $70,000 match roughly. And then in 2018, they were awarded $1 million, and you were also with a $250,000 match. So those 2 awards have been sort of in a place right now where we're ready to pick them up and start to get moving, which is a good thing. So we've been working with Federal Highway. We've been pushing them to help us sort of move along a memorandum of agreement. What this would do is set the expectations for the project, the initial timeline of the project, basically just the design phase, not construction, but also the understanding about stewardship and oversight. So because of the structure of how the awards were originally applied for, Federal Highways Division of Eastern Federal Lands Management, I think I got that right, or Eastern Federal Lands Management Highway Division, they'll be managing the project, but there'll be numerous opportunities for public input throughout the design process. They'll be doing what they call a design visualization process with us. I'm looking forward to hearing more about what that is. But the first step would be looking at 15% design and then moving into 30% design. And at that point in time, we'd get a better understanding of costs. So thank you for your help and support with that one. On a safe,
just a quick check. Are we passing over the Sherburne Turnpike, or are we coming back to that?
apologies, did I skip that?
Yeah.
Sure, no worries.
Why don't you finish this item and just want to make
Would you
sure
like me to finish the grant update item and then return to it? Okay. So in terms of the other grant, the Safe Streets and Roads for All Users grant application, we are continuing to work with Franklin as well as Martha's Vineyard Commission. You might recall where we were proposing to do a joint application, which is allowed per the regulations of this particular discretionary program. The idea here is that we can be more competitive if we team up with these other regional planning agencies. If you look at the selection criteria, they are based on equity considerations as well as fatalities. They have two metrics. One is an average number of fatalities over a course of 5 years, and then one is just raw count. And it sounds terrible to say this, but one of the good things is that Nantucket, we've had a number of crashes, but in order to make ourselves more competitive from a raw perspective, it's helpful to kind of have those additional regional planning agencies team up with us. That way we can show numerically and quantitatively the count is a little bit higher. So a little bit of strategy in that regard. What we would be doing is looking to bring forward a program that would basically create a safety action plan, which would commit Nantucket to significantly reducing serious injuries and fatalities on its transportation network. And since the last meeting, I just wanted to note that those three selection criteria have kind of materialized, and we're still working really hard together to kind of put forward the most competitive application, but we've also recognized a very increased amount of interest in this particular program, so it will be very competitive. So I just wanted to put that out there to help manage expectations. In terms of the Sherburne Turnpike, any questions on either of those grant opportunities?
I'm not seeing any commissioners with questions, so please proceed.
Okay, great. In terms of the Sherburne Turnpike intersection improvements, there's sort of two separate items on this one. First, we had a member of the community, as you saw in your packet, reach out to us related to the intersection itself, Sherburne Turnpike, where it intersects Cliff Road, has two angled sort of entryways with a triangle median today. That's one item. And then in talking with members of the commission here, there's also a separate item that's not really discussed in the packet, this idea about getting a sidewalk along a portion of Cliff Road between Sherburne and I believe Highland to support pedestrian mobility, because where the Dionys bike path terminates today, there's still actually quite a bit of pedestrian and bicycle activity that continues past that point. I'll start with the first item. So in regard to the safety of that intersection itself, the intersection has a median triangle position at the throat of Sherburne. It sort of creates like a slip lane feel for turns on and off the roadway. It's not ideal from a safety perspective because it does facilitate higher turn speeds, which is never really a good thing, particularly if you have a lot of pedestrian and bicycle activity. So left turns from Sherburne onto eastbound Cliff are the visibility is a little bit challenging there, just because of the median and the parking that's happening inside of the median. Further complicating matters, runners and cyclists, because there is no continuation of the path there in that median, they sort of sometimes go behind the triangle, sometimes stay on the roadway layout. So it's just confusing for drivers. They don't know what to expect there. And because, again, people park there, it does inhibit visibility. The common solution that you'd really typically see would be teeing up the intersection, eliminating the median. However, after I took a look at it, I think there might be some challenges related to the distance from Derrymore Lane. So if you were to tee this up just far enough away, you'd have to make sure that the left turn visibility was still good for both of the approaches from Sherburne and from Derrymore onto Cliff Road. An engineer would really be needed to look at this. They'd have to look at the 85th percentile speed and have to do some site distance studies before they could tell you if it made sense to tee up the intersection. So that would be sort of something to think about. In regard to the second item, which I think the commission is also interested in, that concept of getting some pedestrian access on the northern side. I believe it's the northern side of Cliff Road between Sherburne and Highland. I did go out there today and take a look at it. There is space between the curb and sort of the landscaping, although I'm certain that some of that space is private property. So if we were to explore pedestrian connection, it would require working with those property owners to help move things forward, and it would require some easements. One of the things that I think we wanted to talk to the commission a little bit about was our approach to these items. We can certainly go ahead and do some concept sketches. We can look at contracting with engineering firms to move things forward, to add a concept and into early design phases. But I think one of the things we wanted to hear from you all is sort of how these sort of smaller spot improvements would fall in the priority chain, and whether or not you would like us to do that sort of item, as well as kind of managing folks' expectations. We want to make sure that if we design something, it's something that we can fund and move forward. We don't want to set people up with this idea that we're going to look at something that we can't necessarily move forward. We don't have a clear path to move forward. And while I can certainly look at different grant opportunities and things to kind of make the funding available to the extent possible, there would also need to be, in some cases, local resources to advance these smaller spot improvements. So I think we're looking for some feedback about your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Patrick. You already answered my first question, which is who would pay for it? So thank you for that. Questions from other commissioners? Nat?
Yep. Patrick, thank you for, diving in here a little bit. You're sort of hitting the meat and potato issue of commission versus town versus capital versus tip, and we'll bring in, you see the letter from the resident, and in traffic safety, which you're now part of, which is really important. This is one of those little things that sort of finds its way into the kind of the middle of things. It's not necessarily something that this commission would go further than just weighing in and maybe making some suggestions. We had that sidewalk / some sort of tactful improvement has been sort of discussed over the last 3 or 4 years about the connection between Sherburne and Highland, which is extremely dangerous. And there's a lot of people walking baby carriages. It's unbelievable. And you can't see, there's a lot of blindness there coming out, but that T thing is sort of a similar to Monomoy and Pulpus, except that there's a little more sight line at Sherburne looking left towards town. It's not as bad as the gentleman is saying. However, it is definitely a bad spot, but not just for that. It's really the whole walking capability there. With that said, though, I think that you're going to get your feet wet with capital and having projects come to capital and finance for approval for these smaller type of things. And I think this is a good exercise for you to engage with traffic safety and the commission sort of as a dual role that you play, that Mike was chair for a while and for that. So there's a path forward, Patrick, but it's difficult. It's meandering. It's not a straight line. I can tell you that. But this is definitely one of those areas, this little spot. And you didn't mention the construction, although that may not be what the gentleman that wrote the letter was concerned about, but those 2 big projects going on there. And there's been vehicles parked everywhere for 2 years in that area. And then you got the project up towards Kimball as well. So there's really 3 in this area that have been going on for quite a while. And that will be finished, and that will go away, and there won't be people parking in that triangle anymore. So at some point soon, I would think. So thank you for that, bringing this up.
Andrew, did you have any comments you wanted to add to this topic?
Well, I think certainly the discussion about the intersection of Sherburne and Cliff was generated by a concerned resident, and it was the question about whether or not there was going to be local contributions, for example, to correct that, came up with them, and I think in general, many of these smaller projects, I think we're happy to assist with developing some solutions. I mean, Patrick already did this already at Maya Comet and Sparks, right, Patrick? You generated some different concepts, but I do think that there's sort of a limitation, again, what I'm certainly seeing with Patrick is since he started in March, there's a lot of demand on his, for his presence and on his time. And I am certainly a bit wary about having him totally worn out here in the first year when we haven't even finished that. So again, this is our first chance to talk to the fully constituted NPDC. And I think that, yes, we want to help them with design and sort of the visioning part, but I think for these smaller projects, they will need to get handed off to DPW and capital unless there's another type of funding mechanism, coming from the actual homeowners. So.
Can I add one more thing, Andrew?
Go ahead, Matt.
Madam Chair, excuse me, I didn't mean to say that. Madam Chair, Stan Tech, Andrew. Where do they fit? They do a lot of sort of work for the town on these smaller things. I don't know if Patrick's met that guy yet. He's pretty good, knows what he's doing. And I just don't know where that fits into this. And I'm assuming that there is a connection between Stan Tech and the DPW and how these small things get looked at. So that was just one thing I had written down, forgot to say it.
And I think I just wanted to, before I ended, is, to let you know that, I mean, we have, I think, 5 or 6, active bike paths, which are major big projects. Tom Nevers, where's Bert? I don't want you to feel left out.
No, I'm still healthy, so you got a few more years to get them done. I could go downhill fast.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Nevers is certainly one of the ones on the top of our list. Somerset, you may remember, where the design was paid for by Billy Cassidy. We're working on developing those easements. We had an excellent discussion today with the Walwinet neighbors who are very motivated. Several of them are lining up to grant easements for us to move ahead. Lovers, as Patrick has already reviewed with you. The rest of the in-town bike path. So again, there are a number of major projects, and I think, we want to be responsive and assist on the smaller ones, but I think our limit is going to be kind of what Patrick, talked about, which is, assisting in sort of the general conception, and then it's a handoff from that point. So that's how we're doing it, unless you all think differently.
So Patrick, I was wondering, are there some small adjustments that can be made? Something like striping to help direct pedestrian flow, or barriers or cones, or anything that is inexpensive that you would recommend that the DPW could implement that would improve safety at that intersection. That might be one way to go. But I have to agree that we have projects that are already funded that we need to move forward on. And that's where I think our priorities should be for transportation.
Sure. So in this particular case, I think the number of tactical, if you will, improvements, striping, signage, bolt-in speed humps, things like that. I don't think there's a really strong opportunity at this particular location. I know Andrew mentioned the Surfside and my Comet location, where the bike path kind of terminates in a location where there's a driveway, and we provided some more tactical options on that particular one that will be going to the traffic safety work group at its next meeting for review. And some of those things are cheaper and easier to fund, which I believe Chair Longacre you're getting at, and the DPW could go and certainly implement those things should it be the pleasure of the traffic safety work group. I can continue to certainly support and kind of look at options for some of these intersections where there may be some more tactical, low cost things to implement. But in this particular case at Sherburne, I did kind of want to be direct that I think this would require some more significant engineering work, not just because of sight lines and things like that, but also drainage. I think it's a larger project in this particular case.
Thank you. Other comments from commissioners? Patrick, do you have a sense from us of how to proceed, or do you need additional comments?
No, I think this is very helpful in terms of thinking about how to move forward with these, and we can continue to facilitate this conversation if any more questions come up along the way.
Thank you. While you're here, was there anything requiring comment from the state? I see that Raisa is here.
Hello, this is Raisa. I've been participating and I've heard all the information related to the transportation work, and there are no comments at this time, but just the TIP and UPWPs received their endorsement in terms of the signatures, so they've been updated and will be now available with signatures.
Thank you, Raisa. Right, if there are no further comments on the transportation manager update, the next item on the agenda is other business. Our next meeting date, as Andrew has already disclosed, is Monday, September 19th, and our October meeting date is changing from the 17th to the 24th. Any other business? I'm not seeing any, so we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, we'll give Nat the motion and John the second. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson. Bert, you didn't duck out on us already, did you? He did. Okay.
Chad in his car.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector. Barry, I think we might have lost Barry. He's still on the screen, but he's muted. Right, Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you all.
Night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Thank you, everyone.